Broussard joins the desk right now. You are working this story. Do you believe that CP3 had anything to do with
by the way, that was
firing?
a good story. It's well done.
A really good story.
Yeah.
Well, look, in the fact that he didn't go in to the ownership and say, keep Vinny. Yeah. He's my guy. We won 56 games. You know, so to that degree, you could say he's responsible. But as far as him going and telling them, I don't want this guy, if you want to sign me, you better get rid of Vinny, or even not going that far and saying, I don't think Vinny's our guy. No, he made it clear to the Clippers that he did not want anything to do with it. He didn't want to have a say in whether they retained or released Vinny Del Negro. And during the season, look, Vinny, I know for a fact, did not think Chris was against him. So Chris obviously was not giving off vibes, giving off bad body language to the team or to Vinny. So I'm going to say, no, he didn't have anything to do with it. And the fact that he's upset that this perception is out there is not good for the Clippers. I think at the end of the day, he does stay with them because that's a great, you know, you got Blake Griffin. Yeah. It's a great setup there. But I'm told this may lead him to explore some other opportunities.
Okay. Now, for the record, Stephen A. has also reported extensively on the story for us. So, Stephen A., give us your take on Chris's take.
Well, Chris is absolutely right from the standpoint that Chris Paul never went to the Clippers and said, I want Vinny Del Negro gone. The only thing that I would say to you, Chris, and certainly we're not disagreeing here, is that let's call it what it is. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've said this to Chris Paul on several occasions. You didn't sit there and call for the man to be fired. But at the same time, you're a superstar. And so by not standing up and saying, well, I want him to stay here, well, what does that mean? Now, that doesn't mean that it's your fault. But clearly, we're talking about the Clippers organization. We're not talking about the Miami Heat run by Pat Riley. We're not talking about the Los Angeles Lakers run by Mitch Kupchak or Jim Buss or whatever. We're not talking about a plethora of franchises that have legitimate executives in place. And that's not to knock Sachs, the GM, or anybody else, but they're the Clippers. And so when you're on the rise and you're gaining some momentum at a time where the Lakers are in flux, it's an ideal opportunity to capitalize off of that. And this is clearly your franchise player. And if he's not standing up saying that he wants the very guy who insisted, who went to Donald Sterling and said, quote, this will work. Do what you can to get Chris Paul. Fire me if it doesn't work, okay? And then not to hear Chris Paul stand up and defend him. Of course, the perception is going to be that Chris Paul didn't want him. And if that perception is out there, Chris has to at least own that part of it because that's what comes with superstardom. You understand? Whether it's Magic, whether it's Isaiah, whether it's Jordan, whether it's anybody, it's not Chris's fault. I'm not accusing. I would never accuse Chris of doing it. Chris is a stand-up guy. You and I know that, Chris. But at the same time, he's the kind of guy that wants his name to be no part of it. How can you expect that when you're the superstar? That's just living in fantasy land. You're the franchise player. Your name is going to be attached to all of this, whether you like it or not. And all of this stuff with CAA and the branding, and you want to protect your name and all of this other stuff. You're the superstar in a position to get a $100 million contract. You don't get to get away from that. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, let me raise an issue here. Is it possible that Chris Paul is looking for a reason to leave the Clippers? That he, not that he's using this as an excuse or a crutch, but that he actually would like to move on and explore other options, which Chris wrote about. There's still that long shot possibility of Chris and Dwight Howard going back to the Atlanta Hawks, who do have the cap room for both of them. And again, Dwight has said, I don't want any part of going back to my hometown.
Not the Hawks.
Okay, but again, the two of them together would be pretty interesting.
That's the only option I see that could compete with the Clippers. And look, I think Chris wants to stay with the Clippers. I think this will get worked out.
He does.
But look, Chris Paul and Dwight Howard in Atlanta, we know they talked a few years ago about trying to link up and play together. Dwight doesn't want to go play at home, but for the chance to play with Chris Paul, does he at least consider it? Chris does like Atlanta. Again, I think he'll stay with the Clippers. It's great there with Blake Griffin and everything. But, you know, Atlanta would seem to be the only place that could challenge that from a basketball standpoint.